Hi there everyone, it's Cindy Pope at the Cool Tool Studio. I have new templates called flame leaves and I wanted to show you how to make 3 earrings with 1 roll. It's a great project and really time saving. Okay, so here's what we need to do our 3-for-1 project using the bee template and the little leaf cutouts. We need distilled water, olive oil. I made some little balls ahead of time, a tile, a stone setting burr for our holes, and the ball burrs. It's a set I use with almost every project, a rolling frame and a rolling pin, and I'm using the 3 and the 5 for this project. My rolling surface that I prefer is a tile with a silicone mat on top, but you can use whatever works for you. Cyprus clay is what we're going to use, and we are going to use the bee template and the leaf cutout template. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with this project. I put a little bit of oil on my silicone mat for rolling. Cypress isn't terribly sticky, so you don't need a ton of oil. Every clay is a little different in that way. And I don't need a lot of oil on this silicone roller either. I'm going to start rolling to 5. This is really cool, the way you can make 3 pieces at once. I'm going to massage it a little bit first. And when you're rolling, you want the clay to be high above the rolling frame. You're going to press down and any air pockets are going to go away. And I like to roll both ways. I'm going to pull this up. We're going to move these away. And I'm going to roll down, put a little oil on my surface first. We're going to roll down to 3 cards, but we're going to use the tile because I'm going to be cutting while it's still on the template, and I don't want to cut on my silicone mat. So I think I'm going to use the biggest one. I'm going to move it over a little bit because I don't want it to go over the edge of my rolling frame. So what I'm doing is I'm rolling down so the center is going to come up and the sides are going to come up and the inside is going to get smushed down. And one nice, really smooth roll. Again, we don't want ghosting, and you can look at it and you can see that all those parts came up. I'm going to remove my frame. And I'm going to use this to cut. So I'm going to cut here, and I'm going to create these hoop earrings. I've had a lot of fun making a lot of hoop earrings for these videos. When I fabricated, I made a lot of hoop earrings. So I've got the sides done, and I want to do this internal part. And the internal part has the little leaf cutouts, and I'm going to cut them now while everything's still in the right place. And I like to have 2 or 3, but I think this one was kind of fun with just 2 of the leaves. I just really like the leaf shape. And I'm just going to move it around till I see how I want it to be. And you don't want to get too close to the edge. There we go. Try to remember how I did it. And then hold firmly with both fingers on the sides. And that's going to be your best way, so because you don't want it shifting while you're cutting. And I'm going to save these little cutouts because I'm going to use them at the bottom of the hoop earrings. Okay, now I'm going to pull this up. And what I have right here is another piece And I'm just going to cut across. And now I can pull this out. And I'm going to put this on the heating surface to heat, because if you move it while it's wet, it's going to get misshapen. So I'm going to heat it up a little bit so it's stiff, and then we're going to take all the pieces apart. Okay, we've dried our 3 parts, and I'm going to take them apart. You should be careful, but copper also has like a bit of a springiness to it, so I think it's very unbrittle. And then I like to take the flat part of your scalpel and take it down to the point to get pieces like this out without marring them at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start joining together these 2 parts. And you want to make it pretty flat up and down, which it already is. We're just flattening it out so they fit together perfectly, because it's going to be a much better join if it fits together perfectly. And I've made some slip, and I'm going to wet my surface, and then I'm going to start to rehydrate both ends. And you can't just put water on one. The 2 parts that are going to join together, water slash slip slash dirty water, both sides need to be ready to join. And I couldn't, I couldn't join these wet because they wouldn't stay in the perfect shape. So I really like dry construction. I don't think my fine motor skills are as good as some artists. So I feel like constructing dry is helpful, but you got to make sure you're wetting and rehydrating. And when you do the second one, you always have to go back and do this one. And I'm going to use a little bit more clay than I would normally, because I'm going to put them together and press and press, and then I'm going to put clay over the top. Because if you just join the top, it might not stay joined. But if you put clay between and then also join the top, and what we're going to do is we're going to dry this, and then we are going to turn it over and put clay on the bottom also. While our hoop earring is drying, we're going to go ahead and weigh these earrings and fix them up a little bit. So I wanted to show you, this one is 5 cards thick because of the way we rolled it. And I just wanted to show you, when you use a really small earring, 5 cards is so light. So it's 1.6 grams, especially when you do a cutout. So when you're doing cutouts, you can work a lot bigger and a lot thicker. And it's more of a substantial earring. So we're going to put a hole in this one using my ball burrs, and I'm going to start with a little one. And I think I'm going to smooth out the top. I like it not to be too pointed because of the way ear wires are. It doesn't really matter as much with if you're going to put a jump ring on and use it for a necklace. I'm a big earring fan. Even before I did metal clay, I loved earrings. I think they're very fun. And now we're going to go a little bit bigger. And then we're going to use a stone setting burr because, especially with a thick piece, I would always recommend this because your jump ring or ear wire is going to move so much better if you've given it like a little bit of a curve. Okay, so that one's ready. And this one, I'm going to put a hole on it, and I'm going to refine the bottom a little bit. This is the one where I needed to cut by hand, and I can't cut by hand. Now, when you're doing 2 earrings, I cut both the earrings first, and then I actually put them together to make sure they're exactly the same. So I'm going to put a hole in this guy. And these ones in particular, I love to powder coat this one. So if you can see, I've got the hole a little bit off. That's why I always start with a smaller one, because that can be fixed when I go up to the next size. I can move it over to the center. So when some people are extremely spatial and they never have that issue, but I always often have that issue. So always starting with a little one is helpful. So now it's centered. We're going to use my stone setting burr. And then I'm going to add some embellishments with this one. Now these ones I'm going to use for my hoop earring. But I've cut a bunch of leaves and balls. So for this one, I'm just going to put some leaves running up the side, which I think gives it a little bit more interest. So if we look at this one, I put 1 leaf on one side and 2 on the other, so why don't I do the same? And that's why I gave you all different size leaves, and I did more up the side, so you had lots of choices. So we're going to use water again and slip and join this one. Just like we've joined everything else by wetting both sides. And with these ones, a lot of times what I do is just take my finger, and that rehydrates it really nicely. It's the easy way to go. So it's creating slip and rehydrating. It's perfect. And then I always do the surface too, but then we're going to use those really nice tweezers to pick it up. You can also use your scalpel blade. There's a lot of things you can use, but I really like a tweezer because it gives me a little more precision. It got a little dry there, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. Because you always want it to be wet when you join it. And you want to get it just in the right place and then give it a press. You can turn it upside down and press. Oh, you don't want it to stick though. But as soon as it's pressed into place, we're going to put it on the heating surface. Okay, so our hoop is halfway joined, but we are going to reinforce it really, really well. And I'm actually going to, you can hold it, you can hang it from the top or from the bottom. If you're going to hang it from this narrower point, we're going to want to add some clay in there so I can put a hole in the right place. So we are going to reinforce that one a little extra. And I'm holding it together as I've reinforced. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's what I'm doing. Because we don't want, whenever you're joining, you don't want the cracks to show. So when a student comes to me and says, oh, is this ready to go in the kiln? I always tell them, you know, can you see the cracks? And if you can see the cracks, it's not ready because it's more likely to come apart. And having had a lot of things come apart in my early years, I don't like that. I don't like it to come apart. So this is very, very heavy slip, and I'm really rubbing and joining and making, I'm trying to make these two pieces feel like they're one. I'm going to go back and redo the other side. And you see this one opened up even though I joined it. Let's get a little bit more water here. So I'm going to try to press clay down into that crack. And it doesn't matter how messy it is, we just want it joined. You can always clean it up. And again, always reinforce twice. Okay, so I'm going to dry this, but first I'm going to put, see, I can see the crack there, so I'm going to put a little more clay on there because I don't want to see that crack. Because then I'll have to reinforce 3 times, and I don't want to do that. You can also put a bail on there, on your hoops. Kind of depends on what you like. But I'm going to put a hole on this one. Okay, we're going to dry it, and then we're going to add some leaves. So this piece is dry, and it looks well joined, but I'm still not going to trust that. I'm going to reinforce a second time with my little Princeton brush. And the great thing about this little brush is it can get around these edges without leaving a lot of water. But I know I'm getting in there. Whereas sometimes with a big brush, you're not really getting in there right next to the join. And it's really important. So this is a really cute one, and I think I'm going to try to add a little color to these leaves. Since it's copper, you could enamel it or powder coat it. Okay, so then I'm going to re-dry this, and our hoop earring is done. And so I'm going to sand this so it looks really nice and neat. And make sure I'm not seeing where I joined it together. And you want to see, I see a little bit more, so I'm going to goop up some more clay on there. But the back looks good. And actually, when you've joined something like this, adding an overlay is going to make it more secure. So I'm adding these little leaves. So the little leaves will make it more secure. So I'm seeing that join a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some straight clay and just smush it in there. And then I'm going to add these leaves. I had my one teacher at Amazon did very fine work with lots of snakes and embellishments, and she always said when you put a ball on or an embellishment on, you're making it a lot stronger. And her very open pieces were very, very strong. It was really interesting. So I'm going to pick the 2 I want. They're going to go sit in the water for a minute. Okay. And I'm trying to get this leaf so it is over that join. And I'm pressing down because that pressure is actually going to give me a much better join. And I just think the leaves really add something to it. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to reinforce one more time and drill a hole. Okay, I have reinforced the top 2 times and added my embellishment. I'm going to reinforce that again, but I'm going to sand and refine right now. Now I can see that line there, so I'm going to put a little bit more clay on. And you know, it may be fine without that reinforcement, but that's just a trick that my earlier teachers said. When you're joining things, you do not want to be able to see where it was joined. Okay, so all I need to do is drill a hole in this, and then I'm going to fire on top of carbon. I'm going to fire at full ramp to 650. I'm going to hold it 30 minutes. I'm going to carefully remove it. I'm going to put carbon on top, and then I'm going to ramp it full to 1600 and hold 3 hours. Occasionally when you're firing with base metal, you'll get cracks. And the cracks is because the clay expands and contracts as it's burning out. So I wanted to show you how to fix these. It's pretty easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take really almost full-on clay, maybe with a little bit of water in it. And I'm going to push it in the crack as well as I can. And the important thing is overfill. The clay, even without turning it into slip, has water in it. And you do not want it to sink into the crack and then you have to fill it again. So you want to overfill and make sure you have it as good as you can get it down in that crack. And then when it comes out, you'll grind it down you'll grind down the bump. And I have a lot of pieces I've done this on, and they all look pretty good. So if you find a crack, unless it's cracked completely in half, that's a little trickier. But if you just have a crack near the ear wire hole, or like this one just on one side, or near a bezel, just overfill. And we're going to dry it, and then we're going to fire it. Thanks so much for joining me at the Cool Tools Studio.